Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Semantic UI, which is a front-end framework that's similar to Bootstrap, but a little more advanced. It's powered by the Less CSS precompiler and jQuery. It has a sleek, flat design, and it allows us to create great-looking, lightweight, and responsive websites and applications. So in this video, we're going to cover the basics and even look at some of the build tools, themes, and some of the more advanced stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This video is sponsored by DevMountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, DevMountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time job in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Alright guys, so this is the Semantic UI website, and in my opinion it's had some really good in-depth documentation. So we're going to be using this as we move along in this course. Much like Bootstrap or getbootstrap.com, it has all the different elements over here on the side, and you can click on one, for instance the form, and it'll give you some examples. You can click the little angle brackets here and it'll give you that code for that exact example. Alright, now a lot of people compare Semantic UI to Bootstrap, and rightfully so, because they are quite similar. But I do think that Semantic gives you more to work with, but at the same time, I think it's much more difficult. Okay, it doesn't have to be difficult. You can just, include the CDN in your HTML and go ahead and add the classes and all that. But they do give you much more when it comes to build tools, when it comes to compiling. There's 20 plus themes that you can choose from, and you can choose different elements from different themes. So you can have a button from one theme and then say a list in another. And then you can compile all that and basically build kind of your own custom version of Semantic. So what we're going to do in this video is first just include the CDN, and we're going to look at most of the elements such as buttons, lists, icons, and so on. And we're going to create a cheat sheet or a sandbox with the markup. Okay, this is similar to what I did in my Bootstrap and the Foundation Crash course on my channel. So if you guys watch that, then you know what I'm talking about. After we do that, I'm going to show you how we can install Semantic using npm and then use the build tools with Gulp, okay, which is a JavaScript-based task runner. So I'll show you how we can work with different themes, how we can override styles, create variables, and so on. So basically we'll just build out our own custom version of the framework and then compile it so that we can just include it right in our HTML. So let's go ahead and create a folder to work in. I'm just going to create it on my desktop here, and I'm just going to call this let's say semantic_sandbox, and in here we're going to create our HTML file. Okay, so this will be index.html. And then what I'll do is open that in my code editor. I'm using Atom, but you guys can use whatever you'd like. So let's see, we want to do add project folder and go to desktop and semantic sandbox. Alright, so here's our index.html file. Now I'm going to be using, I'm going to just write hello and save that. I'm going to be using the dev server with Atom. Well, actually you need to install it. If you guys are using Atom and you want to install it, just go to settings, go to install, and search for what is it? It's like live reload, I think. Let's try that. Is this it? Dev live no, I'm using this right here, Atom Live Server by Jazz Chen. So if you want to install that, you can do that, and then you'll be able to go up to packages and then go to let's see, that's not it. Where is it? Oh, at the top, Atom Live Server. Okay, and we can say start server, and then I'm just going to grab it. It opened up on a different window or monitor, and here it is. So now our index.html is being run on our local host on port 3000. So I'm going to be using that. You don't have to. You can just simply click on the index.html file and run it, off your file system, or you can use some other type of server. So let's go ahead and get started here. In the index.html, I'm just going to put in some standard HTML tags, and for the title we'll say Semantic UI Sandbox and save, and this should auto reload, I believe, or maybe not. I guess not. Oh well, that's fine. So in here what we're going to do is we're going to include the CDN. Okay, so it's just an external link for the Semantic UI CSS file. And like I said, after we create the sandbox and all that, I'm going to show you how we can actually install it locally and use some of the dev tools. So let's search for Semantic UI CDN. And it should be this one right here, the first one. And you can include the separate components, CSS and JavaScript files. You see, if we just wanted the accordion or the breadcrumbs and so on, we want the entire thing. So it should be, let's see, semantic. Let me just do a search here. So semantic dot, right here, semantic.min.css. So I'm going to copy that. And then we're just going to put in a link here, and let's change that, and we'll just paste that in. Okay, so that's the CDN link for the CSS. And then for the JavaScript, let's go down here. Oops. And let's see, I just want to, we don't need this, we need the source. And then we're going to grab this semantic min.js file and put that right in there. All right. So let's save that, and in the body, let's just say hello. Oh, it did auto update. Good. And you can see that semantic is being used because it took away the margin and the padding on the body, and the fonts changed as well. So we're all set to use the semantic classes. So let me just go back to that site. All right, and we're going to start off with the container. Okay, so if you've used Bootstrap, you know what the container is. It basically it picks a width and puts everything in the middle and uses that width, which is responsive by default. So what I'll do is wrap this hello, and let's say div class. Now, when we create our classes, when we create our classes, we're going to have to use this UI. Okay, that specifies that this is part of Semantic UI, and then we just want to put in our container. Okay, and we'll save that. And if we go back to our website, you can see now it's been pushed over, so it's in the middle, it's in the container. And there are different settings that you can mess with, and you can change the breakpoints and all that, but I'm not going to get into that just yet. Okay, actually we probably won't get into that specifically for the container, but you can see down here it's showing you how to overwrite things. This is what you can do if you choose to install it locally and then compile it to from source. Okay, but we're not doing that. We're just simply including the default CDN, so we can't do any of that anyways. So after in the container, let's do some headings. Okay, so we'll put in H1, and let's just say heading 1, and then I just want to put the other 5 in. So this will be heading 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I will be doing some copying and pasting. I should have did it for this because we'll use copy and paste for like tedious crap like this. All right, and if you look, that's what the headings will look like in semantics. So let's go down here and go to header. And let's see what's available to us. So we can change the sizes. If we look at the markup here, even though we're using H1, H2, and so on, you can also use a div. You don't have to use the head tags. And you can include UI header. So in here, let's say class put our UI and then header. And that alone, I don't think does anything. Let's check it out. No, it doesn't. But if we wanted this h1 to be small, we could simply put in the small class and save, and now you can see that it's now small. There's a few different sizes we can use, so what I'll do is just copy this class. And let's do small, then we'll do tiny. What's the other ones? Yeah, we can do small, tiny, medium, large, and huge. So this one will do large, and then for the H5, which is normally small, we'll say huge. Okay, if we look now, you can see that those classes are overriding the default size of the headings. Alright, so let's move on from the headings. And actually, I'm going to comment this so you guys can have this as a reference, just like we did with the Bootstrap one and Foundation. So that's header, and then I'm going to separate each part with an HR. And then now we're going to look at buttons. Okay, now as far as buttons, in my opinion, I think that there's a lot more available than there is with Bootstrap or Foundation as far as buttons, as far as colors and size and all that, icons. So let's create a very basic button. So let's see, we don't need the type or the name. Let's just see what it gives us by default. If we say read more, and it's just a standard button with no style at all. What we need to do is give it a class, and we want to of course use the UI, and then we want button. Now, one of the selling points of Semantic UI is that they don't use abbreviations. Okay, in Bootstrap you see BTN. They don't do that. They'll use the actual element. Okay, because I guess it's more semantic. So let's save that and see what we get. So you can see the button is much nicer looking. Added some padding, gave it a light gray background, and so on. You know what I'm going to do is just make this small so that we can see both. Now, when it comes to buttons, Semantic UI has a ton of different options or different classes. I think more than Bootstrap or Foundation. It does use context classes, so we do have primary and secondary. We also have positive and negative. So let me give you some examples. Let's go ahead and just copy this. Okay, and the second one here, we're going to add a class of primary, and then we're going to do secondary, positive, and negative. Okay, so now you can see that we have the primary, which is the blue, the secondary, which is black, positive is green, negative is red. Now, we could, of course, change these if we overwrote the classes, but that's kind of a quick and dirty way to do it. If we were to actually use the build tools and build out our source code, we could actually change the variables and change the colors of these. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that later on. Now, in addition to the context classes here, we have just the color classes. So what I'm going to do is put a couple line breaks right here. And then let's say button, tab, and get rid of this stuff. Say class, UI, button. And we can add a color. So let's say red. Save that, and we get red. Now, this is pretty similar, if not identical, to the negative class, but we can still use the color, the red over negative if we want. We can use both. Now I'm going to just paste these in because there's a ton of them and I don't want to just waste time typing them all out. So you can see we have red, blue, green, purple, yellow, brown, orange, olive, teal, violet, and gray. So lots of colors to choose from. And we'll save that and you can see what it looks like over here. Okay, so a lot to pick from. Now, in addition to colors, we have other classes we can add, such as disabled. Okay, so the red button will say disabled, and you can see now it's grayed out and I can't click on it. Okay, we also have loading, which will put the little loading spinner inside the button, just like that. And then we have size classes, so let's start down here, and we'll make this one mini, which is the smallest. Then we have tiny, small, medium, large, big, huge, and massive. So a lot of sizes to choose from as well. So it goes from this size here up to this side. All right, and if we were compiling our own source code, we could change the sizes of these. We could change the variables and so on. All right, so those are the colors. Now, in addition to these buttons, we have the basic class, which kind of reverses it. It'll make the color the border and then white inside. So let's put a line break here, or 2 line breaks. And let's say button, let's say class button, or UI button. And let's say basic. Alright, so if we save that, you can see that it's much lighter. I like this version of it. It looks nice and clean. And you can also add the color classes as well. So if we were to copy that, and I'm just going to do a couple colors. So we'll say red, green, blue, teal, and brown. Alright, so all the colors will work for this as well. Now in Bootstrap we have a class called btn block, which will make the button a block level element so that it goes across the whole screen or its whole container. So in Semantic UI we have a class called fluid. So let's take this first basic button and just add the class of fluid. And whoop, I spelled that wrong. We'll save that, and now you can see it goes across the entire screen, or the entire element that it's contained in. So that's the basics of buttons. There's a lot of other stuff we can do, but I'm not going to put it all in here because some of it is really long as far as the markup goes. But we can take a look at, let's see, button. Okay, so here's just a standard button UI, emphasis. So here they're showing us the primary. And then we have animated buttons. So if we hover over these, I like these. I'm not going to put them in here because the code is kind of long, and I just want this to be the basic stuff. For more advanced stuff, you guys can just look at the documentation. We also have labeled, so a button can appear alongside a label. Icons. Let's go ahead and put an icon button in. So I want to stay within the container, so we'll go right above this div. And let's say icons, and let's see, if we look at the code here, we might as well save some time and we'll just grab that. Okay, so that gives us a little icon button. Let's put an HR here separating it. Now I'm not going to put all of these in, but we can take a look. So we also have labeled, where we can kind of have the, like or dislike, and then we can put some text in here. But if you guys want, you can copy this and put it in the sandbox HTML file, but I just want just the simple stuff. Labeled icon, that's pretty neat. Well, that's not a lot of code. Let's grab that. Okay. And here's the basic buttons that I showed you. You can also invert if you're on a black or a dark background. You can just put a class of inverted. There's also button groups. Let's grab that. Okay, so a group of buttons is just going to put them all together, and it's going to take the corners off the middle ones. So if we take a look at this, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, and only the left and right sides have the edges here. All right, and then for just icons, well, I guess it's not on this page. Let's check out the icons. Okay, and there's a lot to choose from, and it gives you the class. If we look at the code here, you can see all the different classes. Let's just grab a bunch of these, and let's put that right here. just put them on their own lines. Alright, so a couple icons, look at those. Alright, cool. So now let's take a look at labels. Okay, so let's go over here and we'll say, where is it? Label. Okay, so these are very similar to Bootstrap labels. You can put an icon as well as some text or even an image like they did here. But it's pretty simple. It just has a class of UI label, and then you put the icon right in there. So we'll just paste that in. Okay, so there's our label. Let's actually put an HR here. I want to kind of separate the different components. And let's see what else we can do with labels. So I'm not going to do the image. Oh, right here, we can use them for instance, form fields. We can just point to an element. So to do that, I guess we can just type it out over here. To do that, we'll have a div, and let's give it a class of inline and then field. Oops. And let's put in an input. And then under the input, we'll put div. And that's going to have a class of UI left pointing label. That should be separate. And then we'll just say that username is taken. Okay, let's see what that gives us. And there we go. So it's just pointing to the input. All right, so Semantic also gives us a breadcrumb. So to do that, I'm just going to grab it and paste it in. So we have a div with the class, obviously we have UI, and then the class of breadcrumb. And then inside here we have an A tag with the class of section, and then the divider. Now the divider can be any character you want. In this case it's a /, but you could use, for instance, an angle bracket or whatever you'd like. And then we have another A tag with the class section, another divider, and then the active section. So let's save that, and it looks like this. Okay, so that's a breadcrumb, pretty easy. Now let's take a look at lists. Alright, so let's put in here a very simple list. So we have a div with the class of UI and then list. Okay, now this doesn't have to be a UL and LI tags. You can use the div, and then you want to give each item the class of item. So let's look at that, and you can see it's just a very simple, clean looking list. Now if you want to have a menu list, I'm just going to grab it and paste it in. I want to be able to get to most of the stuff that I planned, so I don't want to waste time typing. So this has the class of UI and then list, and then it has the link class, and then we have an active item, and then the rest just have the class of item. Okay, so that would be like a side menu or something like that. We can also format them to be horizontal, so let's grab that. So we have the UI and the list. We also have celled and horizontal. Okay, and the items still just have the class of item. And then you can see it's horizontal. Okay, so this could be some kind of menu, maybe in the footer or something like that. And then if we look at the documentation for list, there's actually a lot more. Okay, so there's the default. You can also use icons. Okay, so you can just add the icon tag, and then you want to wrap the text in a class of content. You can do this format, which is pretty nice. You can do like a file tree structure. Okay, that's a lot of code though. Bullet points, ordered lists, links, we just did that. Content, icons, you can use images in your list. Quite a bit of code there, or markup I should say. Description, various. You can see there's a lot of stuff here. You can have an inverted list, selection. So there's a lot of stuff here. I think much more than Bootstrap. So that's lists. Now let's take a look at forms. So let's go and let's add the HR. And what I'm going to do is just paste this form in, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so we have the form tag with the class of UI and then form. And each field here is going to be wrapped in a div with the class of field. Okay, notice that they use very descriptive classes here, hence Semantic UI. And then we have a label with an input. Okay, very simple. Another field here, first name, last name, and then a checkbox. Okay, so that has it's in a div with the class of UI checkbox, and then we have a simple button down here. So let's save that, and let's take a look, and that's what the form looks like. Now we could also have inline fields if we want them on the same line. So let me just grab that real quick, and we'll paste this in. So we have a div with the class of UI and form, and then we have a div with the class of inline fields, and that's where we put all of the labels and the fields. Alright, or just this one label here for phone number, and then we have the 3 fields for each section of the phone number. So let's see what that looks like. You can see right here we have the label, and then we have the 3 fields. So nice and clean looking. Now we can also have alerts, or what Semantic calls messages. Okay, in Bootstrap they're alerts. So let's go ahead and put in an HR here, and let's say messages. Okay, so let's add a div here, and this is going to have a class of UI and then message, and then in here we'll have a div with the class of header, because your messages can have a header, and then in here let's just say, we'll just say some message. Okay, and then under the header we're going to have just a paragraph, and we'll say this is a message. Okay, save that, and then here we go, some message, this is a message, and it has a gray background by default. Now just like with Bootstrap, we can add context classes to these messages. So what I'll do is just copy this whole thing, and for this one let's add in success, and then for this one let's add error. Save that, and you see we have a green one and a red one. I believe you can add any color class as well. Let me just try that. So let's say instead of error, let's say purple. And yeah, that works too. So you can basically have any color message you want just by adding the color class. Alright, so next thing we're going to look at is tables and pagination. So let's put a comment here, tables and pagination, and this is going to be quite a bit of markup, so I'm going to just copy this, and then let's just paste that in. Okay, let's look at it first. So we have a nice looking table here with nice headers, and we also included some pagination down here. So if we look at the markup, we just have a table with the class of UI, celled, and table. If we take out celled and save that, what did that do? Okay, so this border right here, if we don't use celled, that goes away. Okay, and then we just have our T head, so that's the table header with the headings, and then in the body we have our table rows with just have some text in them, and then down here in the footer of the table we put another row with this th tag that's going to call span 3, so it's going to span across all 3 columns. And then we put our pagination. Okay, so we used UI pagination. We also used the class of menu, floated, and right, and you can see how it's floated onto the right. And then for the previous and next buttons we use the chevron icon. Okay, this one's aligned to the left, this one's to the right, and then we have our items in here. Okay, now if we want one of these fields to stick out, for instance the one that says first, we can add a ribbon class to it, a ribbon label. So let's go right here to where it says first, and we're just going to wrap this in a div. Okay, and we're going to give this class UI, let's just do UI label. I want to see what that looks like, and then we'll end the div. Save that. Okay, so that just wraps a border, gives it a background and some padding. We can also add the ribbon class. which is kind of cool. And you can see it comes back from the side of the table and comes over, which looks pretty cool. Now we can also add classes to the rows. So for instance, this TR, let's add a class of positive, and that'll give it this what is that? It's like a greenish or yellowish. And then let's say for this one we want to do class, and we should be able to use any color class, so we'll say purple. Save that. Oh, I guess that doesn't work. Let's try primary. Huh, that didn't work either. I guess we can't do that. What about error? Okay, so error worked. Maybe we can only do, I don't know, that's kind of strange, but anyways, we can use error or positive, or I'm assuming negative as well. And let's see, I think that's it for tables. Let's look at the documentation and see if there's any other things we can do for tables. Where is it? What the hell is it? Oh. Okay, so there's the ribbon, and then this one. Oh, so they're just using align classes here. You can align to the center, single line, and then what's this? Okay, that's pretty cool. Get repository, so we can kind of do, that looks like a repository of folders. Definition list, so you can see there's a lot of stuff that you can do here. Variations. Yeah, so you guys might want to check this out, because I'm not going to go and type all this in or even copy and paste it in. I just want you to have this cheat sheet with the very basics. Alright, so we're going to move on from tables and go to segments. So let's look up segment. And a segment is used to create a grouping of related content. So the simplest version would be this UI and then segment, and it just kind of gives it a border and adds some padding to it. So let's go down here and let's add in our HR tag, and we'll say segments. Okay, and let's do something really simple. We'll just say div, and let's give it a class of UI and segment. And then for the content, let's put a paragraph, and then I'm going to type in lorem and then tab, which did nothing. Oh, there we go. So what that does in Atom is it'll just create some sample content, and I think Sublime Text you can do the same thing. I'm going to make this a little shorter though. Alright, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so you can see our text has a light border around it. Now we can also add a class called raised. So what I'll do is copy this and then go in here and we'll say raised. And now if we go down, you can see it's raised up off the page a little bit, has a little bit of a shadow. We can also do stacked. Okay, take a look at that, and you can see right underneath, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a couple lines, so it looks like they're stacked on top of each other. We also have piled. Okay, so that basically looks like they're on top of each other, but they're not aligned, so it gives it a nice little look. And let's see what else we can do here. We can basically put different segments together. So if we were to put a div here, and let's give this a class of UI segments. Okay, notice it's segments with an S, and then we could take this and put that inside here. We'll put a couple of them in and save that, and now you can see it kind of looks like a list group in Bootstrap. And we can also add other classes, for instance red. Let's do red, let's do green, and we'll save that. And you can see there's the things aren't colored themselves, but it's the bottom, or is it the top? Yeah, it's the top. Now, if we want to color in the whole thing, I'm not exactly sure how or if we can do that. So let's see, we get that. There must be a way to do it. No, that's the bottom. Oh, here we go. Let's look at the code for that. So it looks like they have to be inverted. So let's go ahead and say inverted. There we go. So now you can color them in if you add the inverted class. All right, so let's look at some of the other stuff in the documentation. I want to look at steps, which is right here, step. So this is really cool. This is like if you have a shopping cart and your website viewer is going through the shipping and all that, the billing process. You can add these little groups or steps, which I think is really cool. And there's a lot of different variations as well. So I do want to include one of these in the cheat sheet. So let's just grab this here. It's not too much markup. Basically, we just have a class of UI steps, and then each step has a class of step. We can put the icon and then put whatever content we want inside a div with the class of content. So not too difficult. So let's put an HR. Okay, let me just tab that over. All right, save that. And there it is, steps. And whatever page you're on, you just want to have the active class, okay? And that'll make sure that it sticks out. So now I want to look at content blocks or cards. So let's put an HR. All right, so this is going to be a div. It's going to have a class of UI and then card. And inside here, let's put the content div. And for the content, let's actually put another div that's going to be the header. And in here, we'll just say content block. And then under the header, we're going to have a meta class. And for that, let's just say, I don't know, we'll just say meta info. Okay, and then under meta, we're going to have another content div. And we'll just put a paragraph in here, and we'll say this is my content. And let's see what that looks like. We'll save it. Okay, so you can see it gives us this little content block. Now, we can also add on to the bottom another section if you wanted to put, for instance, a button. So we can go under the content class here and create another one. So this will be content, but we're also going to give it a class of extra. And then in here, we'll just put a button, and that'll just say read more. All right, so now, oh, that's not right. Oh, I got to put UI button. No, that doesn't look right. Content, extra. Actually, you know what it is? The first content class isn't supposed to go around everything. So it ends right here. So what I'll do is just cut that. And it's supposed to end, let's see, where is it supposed to end? Right after the meta. So right here. Okay, let's save that. And there we go. So now we have the little line here with the button down here. And if we go to the documentation and go to, let's see, card, so you can also use it with images, so that looks pretty cool. And you have the little footer down here, the extra. So you can do all these different variations. This is what we just did. So there's a lot of stuff here, a lot to choose from as far as design and layout. Another thing I want to look at is item. which is, let's see, right here under views. So this is for like, I don't know, a blog or something like that where you have the different articles. So I just want to include this in our cheat sheet. So this is an item. All right, and for the image part here, obviously that's not going to work because we don't have any local images. So what I'll do is just copy the image address and paste that in here. All right, then we'll save it, and there it is. As far as the markup, it's pretty simple. It's just a lot of it, but we have a class of items. Each item will have a class of item. Then we put the image in, the content, which has the header, the meta tag, and then a description. And then at the bottom, if you want, you can use the extra class and just repeat. All right, so that's good for like a blog post or something like that. Another thing we have is a statistic. So let's see, where is it? Statistic. And we can have this kind of look here for a number of downloads or views or something like that. So what I'll do is just grab this first one. And let's just put a comment. Okay, so basically, so we have a class of UI and then statistic, and then we have the value, which is going to, obviously the font is going to be much bigger, and then the label where the font is smaller. So that's a statistic. All right, so I think that that's good for the individual elements. Now what I want to do is look at the grid system. So if you've used Bootstrap, Foundation, or any of the other front-end frameworks, most of them have a grid system. So what we'll do here is let's put an HR here, and then say grid system. Okay, and let's start this out. We're going to put in a div, and this is going to have a class of UI, of course, and then grid. All right, so that's going to start us off with the grid system, and then we're going to have columns. Okay, each div with the class of column. Now, by default, in Semantic UI, it's a 16 column grid, unlike with Bootstrap and Foundation and most of the others, which is a 12 column. But you can use 16 in the other frameworks, but by default it's 12. So what we're going to do here is, let's see, in the column div, I'm just going to put in a button, and we're going to give it a class of UI button, and let's add the huge class. And I'm not going to put any text for the button because all I want is the background. So if we save that and we take a look, you'll see it's right here. Okay, so this is one column of 16 columns that go all the way across. So what we'll do is copy this, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, we'll save that. And now you can see it goes 16 across. Now they're right up against each other because of the size of the browser window. If we go a little bigger, you'll see they'll separate a little bit and there'll be some padding between them. Now we do have the classes that allow us to break these up and make them bigger. Say we want four column divs or whatever, but we can also just surround a certain amount of these columns with a div with the class of row. So let's say the first 4, we want to put those in the same row. So we could go right here and create a div and give it a class of row, and then we'll take the first 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and tab those over, and then put the ending div tag for that row right here. So now if we go back, you can see that now the 4 that are in that row are in the same row, and the rest go on the next. All right, and we can put other rows in here as well. Now, like we we do with Bootstrap, we can also give these columns a width. So what I want to do is start a new grid. So let me see where this one ends. Okay, so that ends there. So under this div, we're going to say div, give it a class of UI and grid. And then what I'll do is take 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, and paste those in. And then we're going to add an extra class on this column called 4. Now remember, Semantic UI uses the actual labels, the actual word, instead of some strange abbreviation. Okay, so what that did is it gave us 4 divs right here, but they don't span across the page by default like you may have thought. To do that, we need to add the wide class. Sorry about that banging, it's my son upstairs. So if we save that, now it goes across the whole thing, okay? And actually, you know what? Why is the button not going? Oh, I didn't give the button a fluid class, that's why. So the buttons aren't going across the whole thing. So let's do that. So fluid. Alright, so we'll save that, and now you can see the buttons go across the entire div. So what else? Let's see. Let's do something that's not even. So we'll do like 4 and then an 8 column and then another 4 column. So I'll just copy this right here, this grid, and let's do 4 and then 8 and then 4, and I'll get rid of this last one here. So that should be 16, and we reload, and you'll see we have the 4 column, the 8 column, and the 4 column. Now we can also float columns. So let's say UI grid. And then in here we'll put column 4, and let's make this a row. And then inside here we'll have 2 columns that will float. Okay, so let's say div, and give this a class of, let's do left. Okay, we want to align this one to the left. It's going to be floated, and it's a column. And then in here we'll just put a button. Okay, then I'll just copy this, and then same thing except we're going to float it to the right. Alright, so let's see what that gives us. And you can see we have these both columns, one's to the left, one's to the right. Alright, so I think that as far as the cheat sheet here, that's where we're going to stop. We did quite a bit. There is more, especially if you want to start to look at the modules, which have to do with JavaScript. I was going to include some of these, but it's just going to take up too much time. So we have an accordion. You can see, pretty simple if we look at the code. Basically, we just want to wrap it in accordion, and we have each div. We can make one of the divs active, and you need to add a little bit of JavaScript with this. So if we go to usage, you just want to include this little bit of jQuery here, call the accordion function on whatever element you want to use it with. And let's see what else. We have a dimmer. So we can basically put like an overlay over a piece of content. We have drop down, modals, pop up, progress bars. This is pretty cool. You can actually interact with the progress bars. And then we have ratings. Okay, we have little star ratings you can use. So there's a lot to Semantic. There's too much for me to go over in an hour, that's for sure. But I think that we have the basics down. Now I want to move to something that's a little more advanced, and I'm going to show you how to install it using NPM, how to run the build tool with Gulp, and how to change up some of the themes and stuff. So let's go to get started. And we're going to go down to, let's see, if you're using Mac, obviously you need to have Node.js installed no matter what you're using. Let's see, so actually that doesn't matter to us. So basically what we want to do is make sure Node's installed, which it is for me. If you don't have Node.js, just go to nodejs.org and download and install it. and then you need to install Gulp, okay? And you can do that with npm. Now, Gulp is a task runner. It's used for anything from minifying code to compiling SAS or less, and there's a lot of uses for Gulp. So we need to install that. And the little -G here, that means that we're installing it globally so that we can run Gulp from anywhere. So you want to open your terminal or command line. I'm using Commander for Windows. You can use the standard Windows command prompt or Git Bash or your Linux or Mac terminal. It doesn't matter. So we're going to cd into where the project is, which is in desktop, and then semantic-sandbox. So from here, we're going to do an npm install -g gulp. So that'll install the Gulp task runner globally so that you can run the Gulp command from anywhere. Now, we want to go back over here, and you can watch a little video on how to do this, but I'm just going to click code. And we need to install Semantic UI using npm. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say npm install semantic-ui, and we'll do --save. So what that should do is create a node modules folder with the package inside, and then it should also create a folder called semantic. All right. And I believe it's going to ask us some questions too. Okay, so set up Semantic UI. We want the automatic, so let's choose that, enter. And then let's see, is this your project folder? Yes, that's the project folder. Where should we put Semantic UI in the project? I'm going to just choose the default, which is a folder called semantic. So now let's go back into Atom, and now we have our semantic folder. Okay, so in here you'll see the Gulp file, and you don't really need to understand what's going on here, but there's going to be a task called build, which will build out our source code, and then watch is going to do just that. It's going to run it, and it's going to watch for changes while we develop. All right, so what we'll do is, what we have to do is cd into semantic and then run Gulp build. So let's go back to the command line, and we'll cd into semantic, and let's do Gulp build. And if we look over here, you'll see that it created a folder called dist. Okay, that's going to be the compiled code, and we have our semantic.js file right here. And it should also create, yeah, the CSS file right there. Okay, so that's what comes out of the Gulp build. Now, if we want to work with our local installation, what we need to do is go back to the index.html, and we're going to replace the CDN link. Actually, you know what I'll do is just comment it out. All right, and then we want to point to our local version, which is going to be, let's say, link, and then this is going to go to the semantic folder, and then to where is it, dist / and then semantic.min.js, or you could use the unminified version. Whoops, that's the JS. We need semantic.min.css, and then the JS we're going to put down at the bottom. So let's comment this one out. Okay, and then we'll just say script source. Same thing, it's going to be in semantic / dist / semantic.min.js. Okay, so let's save it, and now our template, or whatever you want to call this cheat sheet, should look the same. It does. Good. So now we're using the local version that we built. Now I'm going to run Gulp watch because I want to make some changes and I want them to get compiled. So back in here, we're going to do Gulp watch, and you can see it says waiting source files for changes, or watching source files for changes. So if we make any kind of change, it's going to watch it, it's going to update it, and it's going to recompile into the dist folder, which we're including in our file here. So if we go into Semantic and then the source, the src, you'll see there's a theme config, theme.config, and this basically allows you to set the different themes for the entire site if you want, or just certain elements. Now, if you look over here in the themes folder, there's about 20 themes to choose from. Now, I was having some issues with getting the default for the site, for the entire site to work. I'm not sure if it was just my machine or if it's a bug or what, but what I'm going to do here is just add a theme for the buttons. So let's say we want the chubby theme, and we'll save that. Okay, that's getting watched, and the buttons should update. Once that's done, there we go. Okay, so you can see how the buttons changed. So you can play around with that if you want. What I want to do now is I want to change some of the variables. So for the form, when we check this box, it's just a white background with a black check. If we go to the documentation here and go down to, or up to, theming, there's an example for the checkbox right here. So we can change component defaults. So if we go to site modules checkbox.variables, so site modules and then checkbox.variables. So there's an overrides and a variables for every element. Overrides is if you want to override the actual class. Variables is if you want to change the variables. So what we're going to do is grab this and paste it right in here, and we'll save it. And we have Gulp watch running, so that's going to recompile it. And what this will do is change the background to a blue and change the check to white. So if we go back here and check the box, you can see we have blue with a white. Okay, so we can change any element we want here. We can change the classes and the variables. So if we want to go, let's say, these are modules, but let's go to elements and then go to button.variables. And let's set background color. Let's set that to pink, and then we'll set text color to white. Let's see if we save that. Oh, you know what? Actually, we need the @ symbol here as well. So let's save. Okay, so that should recompile. And now you can see the default buttons are now pink. So that's going to be it, guys. This video went a little longer than I wanted it to, and I know that there's a lot of stuff here that I didn't cover because I'm still new to this, but I just wanted to give you kind of an example of what you could do if you're compiling from source rather than just including the CDN. Alright, so it's up to you what you want to do, if you want to keep it simple or if you want to, you know, really dive in. I suggest looking at all the documentation if you're going to do that. Alright, so thanks for watching, guys. If you like this, please leave a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you next time.